You were disciplined about your spending and your savings. You saved money, you prepared for retirement. Now you're living on a fixed income and you want to protect what you have so that you have enough to live for the rest of your life and then a little left over maybe for your children. So you're thinking about asset protection. I'm Patrick Cawley. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney with Keystone Elder Law in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. And this is a topic that comes up all the time when people come into my office. They want to know how to protect their assets. They're not always sure exactly why they want to do that or how to do it. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about asset protection and the basics. So the first question is, what are you protecting your assets from? What is the threat to your hard-earned savings? If you're a younger person, the biggest threat is that you can't go to work and you don't have an income, so maybe some sort of disability insurance policy is the best asset protection you could have. Later in life, you have all the income you're ever going to have and all the assets you're ever going to have. And so the greatest threat to your hard-earned savings statistically is the cost of long-term care. It's an astronomically high rate of long-term care for people over the age of 65. That's probably going to be what you need to protect your assets against. Maybe you're also thinking of creditors, lawsuits, divorces, whether either your own or your children's. There are other threats to your estate, but most likely it's long-term care. So how do you go about protecting your assets from a legal perspective? There are some basic tried and true methods that you absolutely should be thinking about. The first is just a good financial power of attorney. That's incapacity planning. It's if you get into an accident, if you get really sick, if you are one of those people who needs long-term care, who's going to pay your bills for you? Who's going to manage the money that you have, make investment decisions for you? Who's going to arrange for any benefits that might be available to pay for the long-term care? A power of attorney can be very simple, but you might be missing out on the opportunity for asset protection. A good power of attorney goes even further, deals with moving money around, preserving as much of your hard-earned savings as possible for you and for your family. So a power of attorney is the first way that you would do it. Another way that to engage in asset protection is, which is more aggressive, over the top from the fundamentals of a basic estate plan, which is the financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and a will. You might go one step further and have a trust. So if you are protecting your assets against the costs of long-term care, you really need to plan ahead. At least 5 years before you go into long-term care, you set up an irrevocable trust where you're putting property, money maybe, into that trust. And the reason you're doing it is because of the way that our Medicaid rules are written. Medicaid is the safety net for just about everybody out there to pay for long-term care, but it requires that you spend everything you have. So you have very little money before Medicaid will pay $11,000 a month for your long-term care. Well, the assets they're looking at are what you have at the time that you apply, and they're looking back 5 years to see what you did with your money in the previous 5 years. But if more than 5 years before that you put lots of property into a trust, then you can turn to Medicaid and say, look, I've protected some assets, but that's off the table. Now we're talking about what I have in my hands now. So you don't have to become impoverished. And the whole reason we do this is we don't want your spouse at home, for example, to become impoverished because you get sick. That's the whole reason that the law allows you to protect assets this way, because there are many mechanisms in the law to make sure that your spouse at home has money in case your spouse needs long-term care, or even just somebody to come into the home who you pay somebody to help with the activities of daily living. So asset protection might be a way to protect your spouse's well-being, your children's well-being, especially if your children have special needs. So we've talked about power of attorney, we've talked about using an irrevocable trust. Another way would just be careful gifting. So there's tax rules on gifting, and really for most people in Pennsylvania, the sky's the limit. You can give away property, money during your lifetime, and you avoid a lot of taxes. So you're protecting your estate, your assets from tax exposure. But on the flip side, you have to be careful how you do that, not only because it could cause a problem with long-term care benefits in that 5-year window when they're looking back to see what you've done with your money. You want to be very careful about gifting in that scenario. But the other thing is protecting your assets. Do you give that money to, say, to children outright? What if they have disabilities? What if they have problems with money? What if they have an addiction? There's lots of reasons why you might not want to give your money outright, but you might want to set up a trust even for the children to gift your money in a way that protects the assets long term, protects from their creditors, their divorces, and so on. So these are some of the basic concepts of asset protection. 1, what are we protecting the assets against? And 2, how are we going to do it? Power of attorney, maybe trusts built into your will or a trust you create during your life, and then careful gifting. These are some of the basics of asset protection. If you have questions, shoot me an email at info@KeystoneElderLaw.com. I'm Patrick Cawley, and I'd be happy to talk further with you about it.